Welcome to another episode of More Than Dice. I'm Gonzo.
I'm John.
I still identify as Kathy.
Welcome to episode 239. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about what to do with trying to getting new people into your game or people that are interested in it, and how to introduce them to your group, whether it is role playing or tabletop. Although we original thought was tabletop miniature gaming, but John brought it up that it's also a good topic for your RPG group, because people are always trying to look for that, and so it's always a good thing to do. Before we do that, let's go and get down to the business. We want to thank Turbo Dork for sponsoring the show. They create some awesome metallic and color shifting metallic paints. Go out and check them out. We want to thank Midnight Heroes for being so awesome. Also, they make great chibi miniatures and also some good 3D printed stuff. And they have a chibi miniature game, which is actually very compact. It's only played on a 2x2 and quick and easy fun. It actually was a big hit at Warfare Weekend. We want to thank Muse on Minis. We are now back up on Muse. Muse has their system working again. They had to do a bunch of shifting and changing of a lot of things, and so we are back on the network, getting stuff done. So yay for Muse.
Hey.
So everybody can get us on there. Then Parabellum Wargames, want to thank them for making Conquest and having some really awesome. And there's one of our Conquest, one of the Conquest models. Jim's painting up.
So good.
Fucking Velociraptor, orc riding
It
Velociraptors.
just looks so good.
Yeah,
The green and the blue on it's just so fucking. And that one looks great too. I mean, good luck.
yeah. So we want to thank them. Also, if you like any of the products we talk about, make sure you check it out. We have discount codes for almost everybody that are on there. If not, let us know. I will put in a good word for you and see what we can do for you. Also, we want to thank everybody that listens. Even though we try to do this every weekend, I get people that's like, dude, y'all weren't on this weekend. What happened? And I was like, well, we usually say we're not going to be on because of whatever reason, but it's becoming a staple. People are like, I've missed listening to y'all. I drive, a truck every day, and so I like to put y'all on the air. So, guys, we appreciate it more than you know.
We do.
It's kind of cool still hearing people going, "Hey, I listen to y'all," and I'm like, "No, you fucking don't." I'm like, "No, I do." John gets some good rants going. You're an idiot, and I'm like, "Well, it's just who we are."
Oh, great. That's what we're known for. Gonzo's an idiot and I rant.
No, but I mean, we're pretty fun to listen to, and we don't take ourselves seriously. We're not always out there for a buck type thing, which a lot of people are like that. We're not just trying to make money at this, which we don't.
We don't.
Still. So,
don't.
other than that, so what shout outs do we have this week besides our awesome Patreons and awesome people that help us?
So the one I don't know is a young lady who was an actress on Supernatural past. She had leukemia, from what I understand. I don't remember her name. Sorry, I saw it come across. That's not in my oeuvre. But also Jason David Frank, who played the Green Ranger and many, many other roles in the Power Rangers, unfortunately committed suicide. And I want to take this time to tell all of you, if you're feeling that way, reach out to somebody, anybody. There are lines to help you, free lines, people who don't judge you, just want to help you. If it gets that dark and grim, you can reach out to me at any time. I swear, I really mean that. Just hit me up on anything. I will stop just about anything I'm doing aside from work, because I can't, to chat with you and try and help you through it if I can. Nikki Acox is that one who passed. Thanks, man. I mean that. Like, you may not think, but I do. I don't want anyone to have to go through that, From what I understand, he'd had some dark times, and things apparently got grim enough that he decided to end his own life, and no one should ever feel like they have to. Like, I can empathize. It gets dark sometimes in my little life, but I try to tough it out. I mean, this podcast and all my friends are part of the reason why I don't do anything stupid. But if you're feeling that way, just talk to somebody, anybody. Like, you might not think a complete stranger can help, but we can.
Well, and guys, it is coming up on the holidays months. We've got Thanksgiving right around the corner next week. Weather's going down. I mean, it's always a rough time for people. Reach
Dark
out.
longer, yeah.
Yeah, reach out, hang out. There's plenty of games that people can get into, plenty of things that we can do. even if it's just a quick chat. My Sundays, I always look forward to Sunday because I get to hang out with people on here and hang out with y'all. And it kind of forces me to put together models and do hobby stuff, which I should do more of, but life gets in the way.
Yes.
So always reach out. Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's
Get yourself a support group if you don't have one.
Yeah.
I am a fully functioning emotional support human if necessary. I do it for a lot of people. I don't mind.
Yeah. But please take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And each other.
What's our drink for the day, John?
Well, I was going to make something special, but I'm out of Code Red, so we can't do another Code Fireball. So we're doing Dr. Pepper and Fireball. But I'm actually going to start off with some... I've already been started off with some Dr. McGillicuddy's apple liqueur, who I brought to Marshall some time ago, and he will no longer make fun of it because he is a fan now.
Gotcha. Jim, it looks like you've got something already going.
This is the Kraken rum and some cranberry ginger ale.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
If you weren't in the pre-ramble, I am definitely on the water today. I had to take a flu shot and then tattoo and all this stuff and getting over con crud. So I'm like, I'm going to stick to water tonight. Just because, got to take care of myself type thing. So, guys, we appreciate you. We love you. We want you to take care of yourself. Want you to make sure that you're taking care of each other. But please be safe out there. We will see you at the next convention when you can be there. And if not, we will see you again on Sunday.
Well, as they say in one of my favorite movies, we'll see you when we see you.
Yeah. Cheers.
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 I say can't beat that filtered water. Man, that shit is just on fire.
I think by definition it's not because it's water. Let me just say as another spoiler here, if your water is on fire, I would advise against drinking it as your consigliere of water and beverages.
Either that or you're fracking in your backyard.
I'd still suggest not drinking it.
Yep, still not drinking it. I'm going to go and get the screen switched over so I can start working on some models. I'm going to be putting together some more AC stuff because I still haven't put together everything that I have since I have an entire new army.
And Jim's going to continue to that model that was basically the preamble to my opinion of tabletop and continue to make it awesome.
Yeah, and he's already like 90% done to a Golden Demon Award with it.
The speed always impresses me.
Oh, yeah. It's ridiculous. That's Jim. Okay.
Luckily, I don't get like my ex-wife, where she's like, I can't paint like that, so I'm not going to try. Fucking what? No.
Let's see. What do I want to put together?
Do you have a big stompy robot?
Yeah, but I don't want to put together that yet.
Shame.
Because this one has a lot of pieces to it. It's going to take some time to put together. Oh, I don't want to put it.
Excuses to me.
They're really, really cool stompy robots, too. I'll show you a picture later. Oh, I can put this one together. This is just a cool solo.
Kathy's drinking tap water. That's a bold move, Cotton.
Ooh. All right, I'll work on that one. Glue. Do I have it?
Helpful.
Usually it is.
Yep.
So I'm going to put together Phaeton, the Whisperer of Death, living and wraith version type thing. It's a model when you kill it turns into a wraith.
Slightly pretentious name. Slightly.
Type thing. So we're going to work on that model. But so recently I've been going to the game store, playing War Machine at the game store. One, because, I want to support the game store. Two, got to hang out with people. You're not going to get new people if you don't hang out with people.
What? No, that sounds too much like communism, sir.
Yeah. And so I was like, hey, what should people be doing? And I think I'm missing an arm.
Could be. I don't see like enough parts there.
Yeah, they're supposed to be.
I'm missing 2 arms.
Well, this one has both the arms connected on the sword. So it looks like I'm missing. It could be. So I washed all of this stuff and put it in the Sonic cleaner to make sure it was really cleaned. And so this little arm could be in another box. So I'll have to wait.
I will
and see.
say that the Sonic cleaner is probably a step more than you actually need.
It was just easier to go dump the Sonic cleaner, walk and go do something, and then
Just saying.
type thing. But that's okay. If I'm missing a piece, I just call them up and say, "Hey, I'm missing a piece," and they.
It's just
give me-
important because some companies have gotten a little, extra. Mostly it's
some company being extra.
mostly it's just Asmodee is a bit extra with trying to get replacement parts.
Oh yeah, I heard that they have a new process.
I don't know if it's new, but it's a couple years old, but it's still a pain in the ass.
Don't know. Never did it.
Yeah, it's like basically no, you got to contact the store, which is a pain in the ass.
Oh, okay, yeah, I gotcha.
Like I'm sure they were thinking that people were trying to get one over on them, but if your profits are so tight that you think people are trying to get one over on you to get parts, maybe you need to rethink what you're doing. So excuse for giving shitty customer service, but then again, I'm a customer service manager. It's kind of
Biased?
important to me to have good customer service.
Are you biased?
A little bit. You know, been doing customer service for a very long time. Rumor has it I'm good at it. Somehow.
Somehow.
Somehow the guy who rants all the time is actually good at being nice. I don't know. That just sounds... I don't know. I think people are just pandering to me. I don't know. Anyways, topic.
So the topic is introducing people to your gaming group, whether it's tabletop miniatures or whatever.
Or, more importantly, tabletop board game, which is what Jim and I went on about in the pre-ramble, which you actually can't access, so sorry.
You have to be super, super special to get that access. It requires a monthly fee of $1 million.
No, it's just what's talking before we started, yeah. So yeah, like literally there's three parts. Because they're all a little different. The tabletop miniature game, war game, is a little different than both the role-playing game and the board game. In fact, the board game is probably the hardest. Like, it might not seem like it, but it's the hardest to get people to play and then keep coming back.
And why is that, John?
Well, with a board game, they're not as... Board games, especially a lot of the older ones that like Jim and I were talking about, are not necessarily made for player balance all the way around. You know, he's talking about a game where, like, you get a certain start, yeah, you just lose. So with those games, so basically all the games you have to sell it right. You have to manage expectations, and that's a good thing with a lot of things. Is manage their expectations of what they should expect to get from the game that they're going to be joining. Hey, Valendar the Red, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
With a board game, they have to understand that you're probably not going to win your first several games. Like, I will tell you, it was probably 3 years before I felt like I was in and had a contention in a game of Advanced Civilization, which was the big one that they invited me to. I could go full story time, but let's just say the role-playing was not going well that day. The guys were being stupid. So I ejected, and they're like, John, we're playing Advanced Civilization. Create a game club in the local mall. So I was like, oh, sure, I'll play. And like, don't expect to win. I'm like, I don't expect to win. But it's good to know that with that kind of game. You know, the more skill-intensive a game and the more knowledge required, you know, you're going to have a lot bigger learning curve. And I could get all negative about the way the world is nowadays with, you know, all these second place awards and shit. But you have to understand in a board game, you're going to get your ass whooped a lot. There's no participation thing. Just you have to understand. You have to sell it to them like, look, it's going to be tough for a couple games, but hopefully you'll get it. And then if you enjoy it, you can keep playing it. Like, even though, like, remember, 3 years. I wasn't playing necessarily every week, but I was playing at least once a month.
Well, also you have to contend that, you know, playing a board game, you're not just playing against like you and one other person.
Exactly.
like
It's not.
a miniature game.
Mhm.
You're playing against possibly 4 to 5 people, and they're all
7?
trying to
I think with Advanced Civ with the expansion pack, you could have like 7 people, 8 people playing.
Whew.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But you have to understand with those kind of games, you've got to glean something from them. You have to set your expectations right. I mean, I say that a lot, but you have to.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about bluffing and trading. Learned a lot about what Kenny Rogers told us, when to hold and when to fold them. You know, you learn a lot from those guys. The first time someone, in Civilization, when you trade cards, you have to be truthful about at least one of them. I think it is, and so you learn from people when they're being like, "Oh shit, they were truthful about 2 of the cards, but it was not the one I cared about." At that point, sometimes it just ends up being, you get your butt whooped, but you have to expect that. I don't know what it is because I fall prey to it sometimes. Certain games you come into, you expect to do okay. Like, I'm going to come into this game and I'm going to be okay. And don't expect that. You should come into a game and expect to get your ass whooped.
But you should also tell the people that you're playing with, this game is XYZ.
Yes.
Don't blindside them. Don't.
If you are the lead guy on the game, if you were the guy getting the group together, you should manage their expectations. Okay, this game is like, for example, I'll keep using Civilization because that's the big one that I know. Civilization. They're like, John, this is not a war game. You are building a civilization.
Spoiler: John was able to turn that into a war game, but that's a story for another day.
But that was not the point of it. The point was not to have your little men go kill their little men. You're supposed to build a civilization. But that's an important note, so I knew what to expect. Okay, I shouldn't expect to just throw my legions of dudes into other people and fight. We're trying to make our people, our civilizations bigger, and become civilized.
Well, that happened with us with the Age of Renaissance game. Someone made the mistake of telling a new player, well, it's kind of like Risk. Well, he took that to mean you attack, you build tons of armies and you attack and everything.
Yep.
Well, remember was it Munchkin and some of those other games that a 1-hour game turns into a 24-hour or 36-hour marathon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, normally by the time the game will be winding down, it was gearing up again because he was buying 25 armies.
Yep.
And in this game, when you're in the late part of the game and you're doing that, it's like, what the hell is going on? But it's because someone said, it's kind of like Risk. That was the last thing they ever should have said to this person as far as telling them what the game was like.
Yep. Your elevator pitch for the game has got to be on point. Kathy brings up a good comment in the chat about Zombicide co-op. You need to make people know in a Zombicide game, this is co-op. We are working together. You can be a little selfish. That's why I like games like I haven't played it, but like was it Heart of Winter or something? It's like sort of co-op, but you have your own
agenda.
Goal.
Yeah, Heart of Winter is really good.
I like those because that way you balance them well. But like Zombicide, simple, fun. It's a co-op game. You should know it's co-op going into it. You should understand that.
I'm not sure if Kathy remembers that there was the very first board game that I ever played with other people. It was supposed to be cooperative, but the other 2 people that I was playing with, they were so selfish that we never got past the first room because we all died because all they did was like book to the treasure instead of working it all together. Kathy can explain. I don't remember what the game was, but it was my first experience with board games. It was like, what the hell is this?
Yep.
And who are these morons?
It was Descent. Okay, a couple years ago, me and Marshall and Brendan, one of our other friends, he was in town. We played Blackstone Fortress. It came out, and there was this thing where you can hit the other guy or you can relent, and neither of them would relent, so they just basically, one of them killed the other. I think it was Marshall killed Brendan, and we lost the game because they just wouldn't back down. And I understand that. You can understand that the people you're playing with at some point, but you should also sell the game right. It's especially important I think it's most important with role-playing and board games. War games, tabletop miniature games, you can sort of look at it and you can sort of get the idea. They're all similar ideas, though you still need to have the proper elevator pitch for them. You don't pitch a Marvel Crisis Protocol the same way you pitch a Flames of War or a War Machine.
What?
They're different games. They have different levels of balance, ranging from historical balance to no balance. I'll let you guys figure out which one I think is no balance. But like Flames of War, we were talking about this earlier. Jim said he played a game and his French had no chance in the scenario world because they're not just interested in balance. And you have to mention that to people when they're making an army and they're looking at a game like that. Like, look, this is a historical game, so they're not just interested in balance army to army. It also has to be historically accurate, usually in broad strokes, maybe not minutely, depending on the game. Some historical games are very much all about the absolute minute details, and some are not. So you get some of that stuff, and some games are just,
we
go ahead.
brought up Blood Bowl, and that's a game where you can have a completely incompetent, experienced player destroy a chess master, because if you don't know the ins and outs of Blood Bowl, you will die. I mean, you will be destroyed. And if you are that person, and Kathy can attest, she was witness to me. I lost to somebody because I was so obsessed with telling them every little bit of the minutia. I only had 11 guys, or I had 10 guys on the field instead of 11, because I was so obsessed with, look, you need to know about this. This is the stuff they didn't tell me when I first got started. I am telling you so you don't go through what I went through.
That is why I am not generally, for a lot of games, the first level of learning. I'm like the second or third level. I also have that reputation of being the one, like, John's not going to let you win, so if you win against John, you fucking earned it. But you have to know that. You have to know who your players are in your game, who can teach somebody or not. And Valandar the Red, we are going to get to the RPG stuff. I'm just saving that for the end because it's a whole different beast than the other two. Because you're less likely to just get pickup people in. But you have to know, if you're having like a tournament, you want the front table, and you can't always do this, but you're in front table. If you've got one, like let's say you've got a store where you've got a table that's more likely to be seen by quote unquote the public, you want that to be your best players. I would literally, less so at Drop Zone when we had that, but at certain stores, I would literally put people who are quote unquote the ones I want people to see playing up front, because I want them to see that playing. I want, you want those guys to be the ambassadors, the ones who are playing clean, playing clear, have armies that are, I don't necessarily painted, but at least show progress. I mean, because, well, I don't think you have to paint all your models. It definitely fucking helps. Oh, Valandar is apparently an advanced squad leader fan. Welcome, sir. Oh, never play again? Actually, I liked this earlier, but my cousin John was big into it, and he hated playing me in it because I roll dice better than him, and that's the only advantage I have.
No, wait a minute. There's no such thing as you rolling better than somebody. That's like your bane is bad dice rolls.
That's really not true. For all of my banes ever, I mean, I occasionally get the bad lucks. When I get the bad lucks, I get all the bad lucks. But more often than not, I have pretty solid dice rolls. But no. But yeah, so you want to sell the game right. You should, whoever is going to be the ambassador, let's say, should be someone who understands the game and who can dial it down. We were lucky to have a guy, I'm going to name drop, Matt Hennemeyer, who was a very clean player, very clear at what he was doing, and he knew how to dial his game down to the beginner level. Like, he would still defeat the beginner, but the beginner would learn stuff. He would like, oh, I see how this all works and everything. It was great to have someone like that who could be an ambassador to new players. Someone very skilled, always, near the top tables in the game, but could also dial it down. Because a lot of those people, they get up that level, it's hard to dial it down,
Yeah.
You're taking the game seriously. Sometimes it's hard, and you don't even necessarily see it. So if you are the player, don't necessarily go, oh yeah, man, put me in line. I can teach the kid. Don't let whoever you decided your lead is make that decision, because he's got an outside view. And often they have a clearer view than you. But you definitely need to sell the game correctly. Like Blood Bowl, it's like football, but with orcs and goblins and stuff, which is basically true.
But it's so
but it's
much more
violent. No, I mean, so I will actually say is the closer you think of it to actual football, the better off you will do. I mean, to go on a little mini thing, like, I'm here to tell you, actual football tactics work in that game. But anyways, but you need to have that, and you need to know the player who can teach somebody. You don't put, like I said, necessarily your best player. You don't say put the guy who's intuitive but not communicative. It's really hard, honestly. Like, knowing who your group is, you have to have an established group at a place so they can teach somebody. I often end up having to teach people, which it's not my strength for games like that. I found out in all my years of teaching at work too, just I'm very scattershot with information. Like, I will throw information at somebody as it comes to my mind, stream of consciousness wise, like I speak.
But you're willing to do that because it is better to bring someone in than to shut someone out.
Yeah. And I tell somebody, and I tell them that when I'm training them for work also, like, look, I'm going to say things that may not be pertinent at the moment. I just want to put a thing in your head so when this situation comes up, you maybe stop and go, wait a minute, there was something about that. Can you tell me about this? And it's good to do that. Like, now the simpler games, you don't need it as much. I don't know if I cut out there or not. The simpler games, you don't need it as much. But you do need to have that basic overlay of the game. If it's possible, have someone watch the first game. Like, honestly, when I played my first game of Civilization, I had watched part of multiple games. So I had a basic idea how stuff worked. I didn't necessarily know the nitty-gritty of it, but you see, like, okay, that's how that works. Seeing War Machine, you're like, okay, I see how this works. You do this, you do this. And as a player, to help this, if someone's looking, they look interested, you should slow down a touch and explain maybe a touch more than you normally would to an experienced opponent what's going on, so this person watching can see what's going on.
I think the other thing we didn't really cover is there are just some armies that are really difficult to play just by the way they work.
Yes.
And there's other armies that are just kind of plug and play. I mean, it happens with Lord of the Rings a lot. Like, what is the easiest army to start with? The most forgiving army. And then sometimes that can really help a person's experience when they get in there with an army that's not, boy, oh boy, if it's a glass hammer, that's better for an experienced player. If it's something where things just don't die easy and there's not a lot of complexity, give them that first.
So are you saying, like, Uruk-hai are the easier army? I'm not really sure, honestly, with that game. It's been a while.
Actually, usually something that's a little bit plainer, like, say, a Gondor army, because Rohan, they have a lot of heroes which have a lot of abilities, so that's maybe not their best first army. Harad, not too bad, but also, again, has some specialty things. So Gondor is kind of it's almost like the Imperial Guard. There's a little bit of everything, instead of, say, like a Dark Eldar army or a Harlequin army.
Oh, yeah.
Or, again, I'm sure in Warcry, I think Cypher Lords are probably one of those finesse armies.
Yeah.
It's really not for a beginner, because one false move, 3/4 of the guys are dead on turn one.
And that's a good to know. That's an important thing for your ambassador to know, because when you're selling the army, you want to let them know, when someone comes up, you need to switch into, I don't want to say sales mode, but kind of sales mode. Like, okay, I'm playing this army. This is our strengths. You can even go further if you want to. I'm playing this army. This is their strengths. He's playing that army. This is how I view the differences between our games. Like, he has this advantage over me. I have this advantage over him. Like, that would be perfect world stuff. That's hard to do sometimes. Like, at a tournament, I would not expect that, because you're sort of basically telling the enemy what your thought process is. But like at just an event in general, just a fun event, that would be a great thing to tell somebody, because then they can sort of like, oh, I see what he's talking about. Knowing the armies is great. That should actually be your salesperson, so to speak, and the display person who teaches someone a game should be different. The salesperson should be one with the most knowledge, who can go like, oh no, you want to play this army you want to play Khador because it's simpler. It's brute force. It's blunt force trauma to the forehead. Sure, you got some sneaky tricks, but it's not like trying to leap lightning everywhere and bullshit like Signar, or brazen undead like fucking Crix, or all the fire all the time like Menoth. You want to, sort of sell it properly. You want someone who understands the armies and can tell a new player what to play. That being said, new players are going to come in, they're going to see something, they're going to play that. So you have to be ready to sell that. And it's tough. Board games have the bonus of not generally having factions that you specifically choose every time. So they just got to come in and understand the game. They don't necessarily have to understand the factions to start, because they'll get one at random and they'll figure it out. And for board games, you should have an idea of the intro games that your group likes. That is better to introduce them to board games in general, in case you have someone brand new. Like the big one for me in learning that you might have different factions, might have different things to go, that is Cosmic Encounter, if you guys have ever played that.
Oh, yeah.
That is a good one to teach you. You'll have a different faction every time, a different race, and you'll have different win conditions. It's a great learner game for that kind of things. And you should have that stuff.
You mean I shouldn't just jump someone into Twilight Imperium right off the bat?
No, you should not. Valor of the Red says there are armies that look simple first, but actually are tricky to play. Third edition Warhammer fans about orcs are that way. You think just charge with large numbers and get wiped out that way? Absolutely. There are a bunch of things, and that's why you want your best expert to sell stuff. Like, oh, you want to play orcs? It's going to be this and this and this to win a game. It's not. You want to make understand if it's going to be large number of models, moderate number of models, small number of models. What the play style is in general. Sometimes the store employees know that. Sometimes they just don't. The good store employees always get one of the veterans to come by and talk to somebody about stuff. That's what I love about having a good local store that know people. They're like, nah, I don't know this, but let me grab John, who's standing over there. He'll help out real quick, and he'll tell you what army's what and can help you choose. And I'm happy. Hopefully, if you're not in a hurry, you're happy to help. Understandable if you're not. I mean, it's a little bit of expectation on you, but usually if I'm there doing it, I have enough time that I'm like, oh, absolutely, I'll help real quick. I mean, I've run War Machine demos without all the proper equipment, which is tough, but sometimes it's what happens, So like I said, so the I think as far as basic difficulty, I think the war games is easier to get people into the board games than the actual tabletop miniature games, and multiple reasons obviously, but just from a standpoint of you just show up and play. Someone's got the game. You don't need to bring your own game. It's all good. Obviously, Gonzo or myself or a lot of veterans can bring an army for someone else to play.
I guess, and if you're introducing new people into the group, you also have to somehow be able to assess their sensibilities coming in. If that's a new person, well, I've seen people, we'll just say Blood Bowl is the example. They play every team like they're playing dwarves. They could be playing wood elves, dwarves, or it doesn't matter. Everything is the same because they only know one style, and it's a little bit hard to just look at the person and assess. Can they adjust what they do given what they have, or are they just going to play the same thing every time?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the hardest thing about a group because we don't all just play at stores anymore. A lot of us will play at stores sometimes and play at people's houses. And you have to be careful because you're inviting someone to someone's house or trying to get someone invited to someone's house. You have to know that person more. And that requires a feeling out. And more so with what Valendar was going about earlier, which is role-playing. And honestly, role-playing is the hardest. I'm not even sure anymore necessarily how you would attract role players. There's so much online games. We have pretty insular groups. We don't go out to the stores anymore. But I think I would like to, if I ever get the time again, go to a store on their role-playing night, run something, and try and maybe get some fresh blood. That sounds terrible. Some new people in there because, like he says, you need to get to know them a little bit. If your group is a bunch of hardcore role players, bringing the murder hobo in is not going to help.
No.
If you're playing, like my group is luckily pretty much will go with the flow mostly, but you don't want to bring those in there. You need to look up personality conflicts. I had one of my older friends, Troy, was in my games, and as you guys may know, if you listen to our old game things, we kicked him out because he was not working out. It's unfortunate. It happens. But you have to be ready for it. And if you were the GM or the lead guy, I hate to use the term alpha because that's not really fair, but if you're the lead guy, or if it's your house, you have to be ready to go. Like, yeah, that guy's not invited anymore. I mean, it's harsh, but you got to be ready. I feel like store role playing is the best to get an idea for somebody, or if you can do some online role playing with people in the area to get a feel for them first, that would be great. But a role playing, you really have to, you got to really, really know what game you're trying to play, so everyone could be on the same level. You know, I'm lucky that we had a game. We were talking about our new game, which we don't have a real name for yet. But we know we want to do sci-fi. We discussed all of it, so we sort of built the game from the ground up. But you can't always do that. Sometimes you have to go, okay, we're playing this, and this is what we want to play. And the dream is to have enough players when you guys are getting a group that you can just go like, oh, somebody like, oh, that's what I want to play. Somebody like, it's not what I want to play, and they're not just going to play because it's the only game in town. So you have to definitely have your, I mean, again, your elevator pitch. You should always have an elevator pitch for any game you're trying to quote unquote sell, because they have to know what the game's about, what they should expect, so they can know if it's for me or not. Valentine says, we're kind of lucky. One of our players lives in what's mall on the first floor and apartments on the second, 15th floor, so we can stay for an hour and hours in the mall area. I think it's some good game time. That's awesome. Yes, that helps a lot. But yeah, I'm curious because I'd like to get more role players. I only have 3 people in my group right now. 4 to 5 would be perfect. And I'm not sure how to look for more players. Creekins is not really interested because she's a hobbit now. Lives in her own home. She's role playing online 3 different games. So an in-person game is not something she necessarily has time for either. But you definitely have to make sure you sell it right. You have to get a feel for the person because when we're inviting people over to the house, you got to have to know what kind of person that is. And this is where the John rant might come in, because we talk a lot, and I've recorded our session 0. And there are people online, the old grognards, I'm going to call them. And I don't mean this to all you old grognards out there. A lot of you guys are super cool and understand where I'm coming from. But you'll understand what I mean when I mean the old grognards, who are against the session 0. You come in and play my game, you play my rules, I don't care what you think. That's not how we play games anymore, son. You need to make sure people are comfortable with the material you're bringing. If you're a bunch of guys and you're going to play I'm going to use a fucking horrible extreme example. If you're going to play a hentai role-playing game, you want people to know you're playing a hentai role-playing game.
Yes.
If you're playing a Rotsuko Doji, Legend of the Overfiend, people need to fucking know that. So the last person thing people need to know is to come in and suddenly you're doing a Rotsuko Doji and they're like, what the fuck is going on? That is not okay. And that is not you're at my table, my rules. That is bullshit. People need to know that. No, Banyan, that's not an option. Get that shit out of your head. I'm using an extreme example because it sort of proves my point pretty quickly. That's not their cup of tea. Or completely opposite end, or mostly opposite end. There were some guys locally who wanted to there's some Japanese-made role-playing game they were going to run. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm not in, but cool. You need to know what they're playing so you can decide, am I going to play? Because not every game's for every person. Again, if you're going to hardcore role-play, if you want your character to get in relationships and good and bad things to happen and all that, you need a certain style of game. If you want to, Gatling cannon go Bert, you need a different style of game. And you have to sell your game properly, because just saying D&D anymore isn't enough. 100% now. Honestly, in most cases, all you telling me the game system is okay, those are the rules you're using, but what's the game? To a point, I don't fucking care what your rule system are. I'll make it work or not. It's what's the game about. One of people at work tells me about her Strahd game she's playing, and I'm like, oh, that's cool and all. That's really a different thing than everything. But you have to be able to sell that, and you have to know. And if you're bringing someone in later, you have to explain the game you're playing. And sometimes that's just feeding them the proper pop culture references. If I describe my game now, it's sort of like Infinity plus Bubblegum Crisis plus fucking Cowboy Bebop. That's sort of where we're at, kind of. But is that? I mean, it's hard sometimes, especially if you're making a game, to distill it down to an elevator pitch.
Well, and you also need to tell like what the feel of the game is. Okay, I've got that, but is this a a gritty version, or is this a
That was an important question when I did. I'm like, what level of grit do you want? Because there's levels. You need to know that. Because some people don't want that hardcore, dark level of grit. They don't want. Are we playing Batman vs Superman, or are we playing the Avengers? Because those are two, like, they're both superhero, but they're pretty different in overall feel.
correct?
And you need to know that, and you have to also to let people know that. Are you going to play that? And actually, I like that some of my most formative role playing game is Champions, and in the Big Blue Book, which is their 4th edition, which was the one for the longest time, there's a sheet in the back that helps you make a campaign, where literally you talk to people like, okay, grittiness level, episodic versus continuity, all that stuff, and you fill it out. And that's a great idea. You should know that. Because some people want episodic. Some people want like classic Star Trek. Like, I don't want to really care what happened. I don't want to have to keep track of what happened episode before. Like, yeah, it happened, it's cool. I don't want to have to be like, oh, is there some clue he dropped? And some people want that. They want to put the pieces together like, aha, I figured out what you're talking about. I know where we're going. And you have to know that as a GM and discuss with your players if that's what they want. And that's sort of what I rant about is you have to discuss with your players what they want. Like, you may have an idea to a point of a game, but their input's important. Like, I don't know, maybe that was how it was in the pre-John days. You just said, this is the way it is. I don't care what your players want. But that seems like bullshit to me. Like,
It's really important whenever you get, especially like I said, someone new, and you're like, hey guys, when you bring this person in, before you bring this person in, you got to say, hey, our group, we're doing a murder hobo style game, so they know.
Yeah. We kill stuff and take their stuff, and then go find more stuff to kill and take stuff.
Correct, and that should be always number one thing about this more than anything, because I mean they may not be into murder hoboing.
Yeah, like, oh, that's not my thing. Okay, cool, man. Appreciate it.
No problem. Cool beans. See you later.
Senator says, I hate when I figure out everything the DM is thinking and I have to play without knowing. But that's good role playing, sir. And sometimes,
if you're doing it in character, who cares?
Every game, every single game, and I mean this, maybe not so much board games, a little less with miniature games. Every game is cooperative to an extent. Because the point is having fun. If you know what the point is, having fun, you can play that way. For example, in a board game, there's a way to play where you're still going to win, but you don't necessarily fuck someone out of the game. Or maybe you have to. It happens. Miniature games, if you're not in a tournament, you can play in a way that's more fun. It all depends on your end goal for that. And role-playing games, most importantly, you can go to the GM and go, hey, I figured out this stuff. How do we make it so my character figured it out so I can start acting on it? That is fucking useful to me. Like, oh, you figured out what's going on? Sometimes I'll say, go with it. Maybe your character had insight. It's not all about those stats on the paper. Like, those are important for conflict resolution, but sometimes, unless it's completely out of character, if you figured something out, fucking go with it, man. I am happy. Means you're paying attention. Lord knows some of my players ain't paying attention. Ooh, hashtag shots fired.
I just had to. He's the only one I know that's on listening.
He's the only one listening. But yeah, so that's important stuff, and it should be collaborative. Like, all these games are collaborative. Even the board game to the miniature game, they're less collaborative, but they're still to a point collaborative. You know, Jim told a story about being in a tournament and him playing differently because he knew he could just win the game and then letting the opponent win. That's, like I told him, like, you face each other as God intended, sportsmanlike. You lost the game, but both of you had more fun as a result, I'm certain.
Well, he hung his head. He knew before we even started playing that he thought he was in for 2.5 hours of just pointless misery, where I just run off the table on the first turn, and then he just does
After we-
nothing for the next
yeah.
literally 2 hours until the timer runs out. Or it could be even meaner and leave just enough guys on the table to make sure he gets nothing across. So I could have very easily just done a max victory point thing without even thinking about it.
I mean, like in a tournament, I would not fault somebody for that. But
Correct.
the fact that you didn't just do that speaks volumes to your character. And yes, you warned them beforehand they shouldn't have done this, but even then, you still gave the guy a chance. Again, that speaks volumes to your character, and that is what it's about. Like in a standard game, not tournament, you would have done that every time. You know, you would have engaged, you want to have fun. But then again, also, you guys might have just re-rolled the scenario. But that's an important note. You know, you have to remember that, again, tournaments are out because tournaments are a completely different deal. People go in, you pay your money, you take your chances, unfortunately.
Correct.
But in just a pickup game, it's about all of you having fun. Both of you having fun. There's two parts to this. Because if he doesn't have fun, he's not going to come back and play. They're not all Banyan going to let me roll them every time and play. That's not really true. Banyan doesn't just let me roll them. You know, but you have to be ready for that. And it's harder. I think it's actually harder in non-role-playing games, though I think it's more anti-intuitive in the role-playing games that I don't fucking understand. I'm going to blame the quote-unquote old grognards for that. Because they're all about that whole, it's my game, we play my way, whatever. Like, no, fuck you. Must be nice to have enough players to be like that, but I'm not like that at all. Let's see, Fountain of the Red says he's a long-time veteran. 2 of our players have about 4 or 5 years experience. The other 2 are very new. When I play instead of run, I have to force myself not to lead the party, so I feel like I was trying to take over the game. I empathize with you, not that I get to play. We have a game. We have a small number of people who, there are people you know are going to take over the game. And I saw it the last time El Marshall got to play in one of my games. The last 2 times, he tried very hard to not lead the party. Because he's that kind of guy. It'll happen a lot, and he's done it a lot, and I understand. It happens a lot to me. Sometimes I'll actually lean into it. I'll build a character made for leading the party. Like when we did a little bit of Shadow around Banyan was running, I played the face, basically. Not Brushhead Dave is probably the most veteran. I mean, he and Banyan are pretty equal, but he tends to lead the party because that's his lot in life. He's made to suffer. But that's the thing, you know. You have to try that sometimes. So we played a big game of Through the Breach a couple years ago. El Marshall was running it. I actually we had enough players, it was okay, but I literally pulled back from being a force at the table all the time to let other people have their time in the sun. You know, let people lead more, which is cool. You have to do that. It's hard though, man. That's like a whole other just role-playing discussion, how to do that.
How not to be a GM and take over everything?
Well, not even that. Like, we knew, not Brushhead Dave and I knew he was not using the rules, right? We're just like, fuck it, not worth it. He's having fun, we're having fun, fuck it, right? Rules are just there to conflict resolve. I don't care how they fucking go. Just don't surprise me or fucking with them. I don't care. But yeah, so getting new players into role-playing is hard, and I don't envy people. Online so much easier. I mean, I don't play it a lot, but I know it is because you don't have that same problem of being in the same room. You can mute your mic for a second and curse your brains out, and it's okay. But in person, you can't do that necessarily. Maybe you got to take a bathroom break. Maybe you got to do something, whatever. That doesn't look like it's working well, Gonzo.
Yeah. No, I'm going to have to shave it and do everything to get that. Just because it's such a weird angle.
Do you not have solid bases so you can pin them? Hashtag pinning for the win?
Yeah. Gonzo doesn't pin and he should.
No, fuck that.
You should pin. Jesus, get a Dremel. Anyways, yeah, so They're Warcaster models. War Machine 40K, if you prefer.
Must
But
have
yeah,
said so.
so it's tough. I mean, I think my main goals are try to get an idea for the player. You know, especially if it's role playing, you need to get an idea to make sure they're going to fit personality wise.
That's a big kicker too.
Yeah, it's tough. It's the toughest because, you know, as people get more comfortable, they let more of themselves out, and sometimes that more of themselves doesn't jive. But I like to give everyone a chance. Also, you know, elevator pitch. Make sure you've got an elevator pitch for the game. Any game that you are going to describe, have an elevator pitch. You know, try and distill it down to both world and game and game. So, for example, for Malifaux, I would call it very scenario driven, very shenanigan heavy, and then I would call it. I usually call it Gangs of New York meets steampunk and Cthulhu, which pretty accurate. So that way now you can they can have an idea. Okay, I know what the feel of the game is. I know what the lore is like, and I know sort of an idea of how it plays. And that's important because as someone gets, and that's only gonna be, those are only gonna be helpful more for, like people who are veterans, like someone brand new to gaming. You might just have to go and just show them what the game looks like.
Yeah.
I see that, Overlord.
Later.
And see, Valendar, that's exactly the opinion I like. Like, you're not a fan of the game, but you love the creativity and sculpting. You don't have to be a fan of every game. It's awesome. You know, we're in a great gaming era where there are tons of games out there. And you don't have to like every game. I don't play D&D, honestly. I haven't bought I haven't bought anything 5th edition. Not gonna.
Not gonna do it.
Maybe see D&D 1 when it comes out, though there's some stuff on that. And I'm not going to rant about that. We're going to pass. But yeah, so you need to get a feel for the players, have your elevator pitch for either your campaign if it's a role-playing game, or the miniature game, how it plays. Have an idea for the world, because that's going to matter to some people. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes people are like, I just want the game. Cool. You want the game? You just want the game. Cool. I'll tell you how the game is. But you got to feel that out, too. But if you're doing a role-playing game, you need to be able to explain to them what the feel of it is. Because it's going to matter more in that, less so as you get there. And even board games, you need to tell them what it is. I mean, there's a lot of terms nowadays that maybe I don't understand all of for all these games. You know? If I were to describe something like diplomacy, I would say it is fuck your friends and bring a bottle of Advil. Is it a good game? I don't know. I'd say no. Have I enjoyed it? Yeah, but I enjoyed fucking people sometimes. It's funny. The first time someone pulls their card out of the hat telling them, like, I attack such and such with support from this place, and you're like, haha, the hell you do. But you have to understand the game. Like, I don't get invited to play a lot of diplomacy games. It's okay with me. Because often, you know, I grew up in the gaming club era where a game would go on. If it was the only thing going on, you just jump in. You know? Early on, my cousin John would drive past the mall we had our club in to pick me up and then go back to the mall so that I could come play games. And, you know, I owe him a lot for that. But Valor the Red says, Diplomacy is a game that may or may not have destroyed more friendships than Monopoly, but it did so more completely and thoroughly. Yes, this is true. So honestly, it's a game. I don't think any of that shit personally.
No.
But I can see people who have, and it's funny.
The Firefly game can do that too.
Yeah, Firefly. Oof. And that's another thing you have to understand is how the game plays and how long the game can take. Don't tell them the box. Because the box says Firefly play in 2 hours. Bullshit!
That is one of those games where you have to be willing to murder your parents and sell the grandkids, because that's pretty much what you're doing in every game of that.
Yep.
Never played it.
It. I'm not gonna say it wasn't enjoyable, but it was fucking long. It was long enough that Devil Squid's wife started calling for him, like, "Hey, where the hell are you?"
It
But
is a really long game.
yes, you should know that too. Like, honestly, you get to play Diplomacy. Diplomacy is reasonably long game. Firefly, longer than it says in the box. I think Diplomacy actually has a realistic time on the box. Like, don't make any fucking plans for the night. Advanced Squad that you were talking about earlier. Like, how long is the scenario? Don't make plans. That's how long the scenario is. Don't make any plans. If you're lucky, someone will set it up so you show up and it's already set up and you can just go and maybe you get to have dinner that night. Or maybe you're ordering pizza for dinner.
Or don't have Jim over to play, was it Wind and Sail or something? No, what was it called? Wooden Ships and Iron Men.
Okay.
It was 4 guys. They knew I was really into anything Navy. They said, oh, we got to have Jim over. He loves sailing ships. He used to build sailing ships when he was 5 years old. We got to have him over. It was 4 guys. They were all set to have like a day-long affair. They set everything up. It was great. It was going to be fantastic. And I turned their Dance of Wind and Sail into a monster truck rally in about 2 minutes. Because I said, are there any like crew ratings on this? Like, these ships would just go to their death with no questions asked. They said, well, yeah. So I basically took about a third of my line, just sailed it right towards the enemy line. About 15 minutes in, all the ships were all tangled together. They were all on fire. And in about 20 minutes after that, they were all up on a sandbank. And they said, you are never allowed to play this game again. Because it was over. Like, in an hour, their whole day-long affair was trashed. Because I just said, oh, I just have to sail these ships right towards these other guys, foul up their lines, and then just literally shoot into the melee. Like, just tangle up all the ships and just fire into it. Because if I lose a third of my ships, well, they don't care, apparently, because they have no morale factor in them.
Yep.
And they never should have said that.
That's what we call acceptable losses.
ATLs, baby. You gotta have them ATLs. And yeah, they're like, you're never getting to play this again.
So that's actually a good point, is understand how old the game is too, because older games, and I hate to be blunt about this, are not designed as well as newer games. Like, innovation's a fucking thing. We finish with that, playing a role-playing game that's from the 90s right now. Like, not everything's written well. Sometimes you're going to have to fucking wing it and understand that these games are not as polished as stuff nowadays. Because everything comes out it's additive on other things. You may say, oh, that game's not important. No, that game was important in the past because it showed somebody something that they saw in their childhood and then added or didn't add to their game when they came out. So hopefully that is a little help when you guys finding people, or at least having some idea how to find people for your games, because we're about time for the media section.
7:59.
All right, flip over. Decided to work on the vehicle since it was big chunky pieces of resin.
Yeah, you should be wearing a mask for that. I like how he completely ignored the fact they gave him a safety tip. This just in, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen.
Gonzo doesn't
Deal
care.
with resin. Wear a mask. You don't want resin bits in your lungs. Like, in the big chunks, it's not as bad, but you should just do it. Just be careful. Like, honestly, even just the masks we used for fucking COVID, even though they're not super great, will help get some of those chunks out there. Better to have a full mask, a dust mask, or even a full respirator if you like being crazy like John.
Ball gags will work too.
I cannot confirm nor deny that. I don't have any experience with that, so I will take your word. Not where you want to go, though. John says not as Gonzo does. Yes.
We need that on the back of a T-shirt. Our logo on the front and on the back. Do as John says, not as Gonzo does.
I mean, it's important to forget. It's important people forget that there is safety things for a reason.
Correct.
Yes, right under the red. Yes, if you're working with resin and that's what you got handy, fucking put it on. Like, especially as you get down to finer and finer pieces. If you need to file or sand it, put the mask on. This shit's real dangerous for that. Not so much in the cutting pieces. I'm extra safe with that stuff just because. And also remember, he's got dogs around, so he's going to spend a lot of time cleaning that shit up afterwards because he doesn't want the dogs getting any of that.
Yeah, I mean, if I were sanding, 100%, there would have
But
been.
you should with that because you can get little chunks when if you're gonna, because sometimes you'll get in this groove and you'll start scraping a little bit, and that's going to cause some of those problems. So just be careful. Safety first.
Oh yeah.
Media section. I'm going to talk about music and YouTube stuff. I did not watch a fucking thing.
I have nothing really big. About 4 things, but nothing huge. Nothing elaborate type thing. Jim, how many you got today?
I can just talk. Simon Whistler. It's a guy on YouTube that has several different channels like Biographics, Geographics, Warographics. They're pretty fun to watch. He's just entertaining. Sometimes his scriptwriter just.
Though he's a machine. How many does he put out?
He also has mega projects. Then he has side projects.
Yep.
He has something like I think he has 1,700 different YouTube channels.
He's crazy. Like, I agree. I watch some of his stuff. It comes up enjoyable. But Gonzo, why don't you start with something specific?
So Enola Holmes 2 came out.
Yep.
Which was on Netflix. Enola Holmes 1 was pretty decent.
Is it a movie or is it a series?
It's a movie.
Okay.
The first one was pretty good, pretty decent, pretty fun. Did a lot of the cool,
Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And so I was like, yeah, I'll give this one a shot. No big deal. Loaded up. Took me 2 days to watch because I've been super busy with a lot of other things. And it was just okay. There wasn't anything bad. I mean, it wasn't great. There wasn't, you expected it, but they didn't do a lot of cool fourth wall breaking like they did in the first one. This one was just kind of like, oh, we're throwing the fourth wall breaking in there just because we did it last time type stuff. And it just didn't feel, I don't want to say honest, but that's the best way to put it. So I was like, but watched it. It's not bad. I mean, it's like 2 hours or so. So, I mean, it's worth it to have it. And you can go back to it without having, felt like you have to rewatch part of it or, get into it because it's like this mind-blowing thing. But it was fun. It gets I'd say a 2 because it's not great, but it's better than a sharp stick in the eye type thing.
So the amount of movies that are not better than a sharp stick in the eye, I can probably count on 2 hands.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying. I mean, it's not gonna win an award. It's not gonna do anything, but it's just
not gonna have
fun.
any buzz.
Yeah, it's just okay, cool. I watched that. It was fine. I'm okay with it. Cool. Move on to the next one. So I give it like a 2 space herpes. Nothing bad.
Fair enough. Well, again, my week has all been music and YouTube videos, I'll be honest. I'm trying to think of anything. Actually, this is a good thing to do, and I didn't think about it, is now that most of us are adults and we have actual disposable income, go back and find some of the stuff you loved as a kid. And if you want that music, buy that music or whatever. All those things that you're like, I loved this album, go get it. Or if you have Spotify, make sure it's on your Spotify playlists. I know a lot of the kids nowadays like the Spotifys. I am like having the music on my computer for when internet decides to go kaplooey, and I'm like, I'll just listen to my music anyways. Like, I don't care. Not everything. There's some stuff like I don't necessarily need, but I was listening to Michael Bradley, who did some of the music for Robotech, some of the later series, and he had an album, and it's been on my favorites for a while to buy it, but I just keep forgetting when I had the opportunity. Like, oh, I'll get that later. And I finally said, fuck it, I'm going to buy it. So I bought it. I bought the signed copy because I'll give the guy a couple extra bucks to sign a copy. Sure. That's cooler. Enjoying the crap out of it, It's kind of 80s nostalgia, being some, music from Robotech and all that, but I'm enjoying the crap out of it. Is it the greatest? No, it's not the greatest, honestly. I mean, he's almost the epitome of a struggling musician type, you know. He's not like a big name or anything. It's not like his career's exploded since then, but I enjoyed the crap out of that. So I'm going to give his album, which is called Lonely Soldier Boy, which if you are a fan of Robotech, you'll understand which songs he's singing now. He was all the songs Lancer did from the later series, The Major Invasion. I'm going to give it a solid 2. It's very enjoyable. Not like anything earth-shattering, but it is cool. Definitely, I thought it was worth the money, but I'm a kind of guy who buys CDs and all, so call me old school, if you will.
Jim?
Let's see. Well, what was Simon Whistler, The Virtues of War. It was a book that I had gotten audio. We were able to get me an Echo, and I finally got it set up so I could actually listen to that on the Echo. That was something I listened to it hundreds and hundreds of times, and it just never gets old. It's read very well by the reader, and it's just I love this book because it's historical, but he puts a lot of interesting personality into all the characters. So instead of just kind of, okay, there's Parmenio, there's Hephaestus, there's Alexander, but now he really puts some emotions behind him. It's almost like he's turned the story of Alexander into a serial, like the old time radio serials, where you can just listen to episode after episode after episode. He just puts so much personality into these historical characters. Really fantastic. And he kind of will. It's funny because when they get into things like Afghanistan and stuff, it's just like anybody messing around with it today. Alexander had issues. You have issues today, and it's really interesting how he takes on these characters and gives them a little more than just, okay, they're these mythical characters. He makes them just regular people with their flaws, with their strengths and weaknesses, and kind of what motivates people.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was all about motivation, and there was just a certain point where he couldn't motivate people anymore. It's about leadership styles, right? There's lead from the front. There's the guy that gets 100 miles behind you, and there's not necessarily guarantees to any particular leadership style, because you can lead from the front, and that gathers a lot of, well, like you guys, you in business, right? You're the team leader there, John. You have to motivate those people. You're a coach as much as a boss.
Yep.
To kind of, what is it to take this person to do this job? You can't just use the same treatment on everybody. Some people you have to kind of stroke the ego. Some people you have to kind of just bash them on the head. Some people you just got to let them go.
We had this discussion before leaders versus managers.
That is it, and that was, no one leadership style is ever gonna just win out. You have to be flexible.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because even him, as much as his leadership style worked, there was a point where even the most loyal among them just said, "No, we're done.
Yeah.
You may want to keep going. We ain't going anymore. You go by yourself. That's great. We're done. We're done here. That's it." So that was kind of interesting because that has just been a topic that I've discussed with people over time is leadership styles, and there is no one leadership style that's going to fit everything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's an important note, and it's cool to see that in sort of ancient stuff too. Like, when you more think like, oh yeah, everyone would follow Alexander to the ends of the earth. I mean, everyone's got their limit, right?
And they did. He eventually had to form a unit of his own. He called them Attacktoy, and they were basically just malcontents. But they weren't like the new guys. They were actually the most veteran and most trusted of soldiers, because they just said, look, now you're just doing this for your own ego here.
Yeah.
We're done. We want to go home. We haven't been home in 5 years.
Absolutely. So Simon Whistler is narrating that, or did he write, or?
It was an audio book, and I forget who the reader is, but Stephen Pressman is the author. He's done a bunch of different kind of historical works like that. I think he did one on Harry Truman as well.
Oh, cool.
And that was kind of just what formulated his personality, his experiences in the First World War, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you got the time, audiobooks are great for that, especially biographies and stuff. I find, something that would be more dry to read, you get the right person reading it, and it becomes super interesting.
And there was just the perfect voice for it. Because there's other books where the voice just wasn't doing it for me. Someone just got to do a audio book of the Shattered Sword. As soon as someone does that, gotta have that.
Fair enough. Gonzo?
So been dying to see this series, the new season when it come out, because during COVID, it was taking quite a while for the series to come out because it was an animation, and they had a big old thing on the show saying, "Hey, we got renewed for the entire series." So I was like, "Woohoo!" Get to have an ending to everything, and it's Dragon Prince. Netflix series done really, really well. Great diversity, great cast, great characters, everything. I enjoy this series a lot. I even bought, the RPG and, bought the models. I really enjoy this series a lot. New season came out. It was very short, much smaller season than normal. Was kind of disappointed in that. The animation was a little bit off also. They're trying to clean it up and make it a little bit better.
I
But
mentioned that last week.
yeah, but I went and started watching it a little bit more and going back into it. The story was really good. I liked it, and I was like, this is really good. But the animation, I just went back and watched it again, and I was like, then comparing it to the last season, because it was still stuck in my head after last week. And I was like, man. And it's like the facial expressions just aren't kicking off with the new animation they're doing. And I didn't feel the emotion from the characters this season compared to the previous season because the animation wasn't emoting that emotion right. And so I was like, I wanted to go back and check it again just to be on the safe side. And I still felt the same way. Still a great story, still a great, watch. I love the story, love the world. It's the reason why I bought the RPG, but I was just, man, I wish they would I hope they do better next season because we don't have, we don't have a lot, but I really hope it gets better. So,
Fair enough.
I had to go back.
Okay.
Type thing.
As someone who watched the 80s animation, it doesn't bother me when animation gets a little sketchy, let's be honest.
Well, but when you're used to it from watching this new stuff and you can feel it better, I just kind of like, something just feels off.
Remember, my formative animations were Robotech, where we have all the wonderful stuff made by the Japanese studio and the stuff that the American animation studio put in to fill in, and you're like, you can tell nowadays, but
yeah. So,
as long as the story's good, it's all good.
Yeah, no change on any rating type stuff, but I was just going back for my own type thing. So, John?
I've been watching a YouTube channel that does a lot of reviews of G.I. Joe toys and stuff. Mostly not the classified stuff, not the big stuff. The older 3.75 inch figures, 3.5 inch figures, the smaller ones. Called Half the Battle. The channel's Half the Battle Timmer. Timmer's the guy.
It's a great name.
It is a great name. He's Belgian, speaks very good English. Like, damn, his English is better than some of the English speakers here in Baltimore, which is maybe not saying much, but still. And he's got tons and tons of videos on all sorts of stuff. I just sort of found it. I was homesick one day, working in between and watching stuff because I couldn't fall asleep because my body hates me sometimes. And watched a bunch of stuff on Ultra Stuff. He did a whole big selection on Sergeant Slaughter where he goes over the models that came out, the background as a G.I. Joe, the background as a wrestler and everything. Really enjoy what he does with that. If you like that G.I. Joe stuff, he totally goes into all sorts of stuff. Opinions on the figures and tanks and all that stuff. It's just fun to watch. A little bit of a piece of nostalgia. And also he keeps it relatively bite-sized in the under 10 minutes generally. Which is important to me because sometimes you just only got that kind of time before the next thing you want to do. You're like, I'm going to eat this snack. I want to watch something real quick while I'm doing it. Boom, perfect. So I like that. I'm not going to give a channel a rating, but check them out if you're interested in that stuff. I think I'm the only real G.I. Joe geek here, so but there you go.
I remember it as a kid. I remember that G.I. Joe.
Yeah, naming it Half the Battle is definitely well played, sir. Well played.
Oh yeah. So, Jim, do you got anything else, or was it just that one?
That was my main thing was the listen to the audiobook and just kind of a interesting just about leadership and motivation.
Talking about audiobook, I want to go off to a little tangent so we got a little time. So Captain Mizzy was asking me about books that, she could listen to at work because that's what she does while she's doing all of her stuff. And, I was trying to find stuff that would be good that thought she might like. And I gave her some Terry Brooks recommendations. One of his Magic Kingdom for Sale,
Okay.
which is,
Trying to make sure I placed it.
it's a comedy fantasy type thing, and it's right up her alley. She thought that was interesting. But
Yeah, that's sort of like the little more of the adult, not so much the YA of the other stuff that came out at the same time.
correct. And
Don't
so,
Piers Anthony or anything.
yeah, so I don't know how she's enjoying it. She hadn't told me, but I was,
Tell us.
she'll tell us. But I was looking back at it, and I was looking at all the, the Shannara stuff, because I remember reading those as a, teenager and getting through it. And now that, there's the prequels and the prequels type thing. And I was like,
Yeah, everything's like that. Gosh.
there's so many books out there, but I was like, I think I want to go back and listen to those again, and do them in order that they're chronological or not written order.
Oh wow, that's sometimes crazy.
Correct, but I want to do that, so that was just something I was thinking about. I got to get enough credits to start it over from the start of it to the end of it,
Yeah,
and
man.
because I think he's done with the Shannara stuff.
I think about rereading some of that. My main thing I cut my teeth on early fantasy was Piers Anthony, which I'm certain is not going to hold up like it did. I mean, it's definitely YA. It's hardcore aimed YA, and I'm not sure I would enjoy it necessarily as much as I did back then. Though, I mean, it's very punny.
So that was just something that brought up that I was wanted to do that.
No,
So
that's cool. Cool, that's a good idea. I mean, if you've got the time, again, we talked about it earlier when Jim was talking about his. If you got time for audiobooks, it's a great way to get some books in.
yeah. So other than that, I did pick up the new God of War type thing, which I liked the last one, and this is a complete it is the new, and it takes off exactly pretty much a few years after the last one, which I'm good for. I'm happy. So it's God of War Ragnarok. I'm working through it. Graphics are great. They're fine. No big deal. It's fun. It's interesting. The combat's good. But I've learned that I kind of turned down the setting a little bit on instead of normal, just turn it down a little bit, because they let you do like it's a complete story, you'll never die type thing, but you'll have a good fun combat system.
That is a fucking great idea for games. Let's be honest. Not everyone wants the challenge of their lifetime every time they pick up the controller.
Correct. And then they got one that's like, okay, you can still die, and it's going to be a little bit harder, but nothing. Then you got normal, then of course you work up. And I noticed myself putting it one step lower because I'm like, I want to see the story. I want to have a little bit of a a challenge, but I don't care to have a Souls game challenge out of this.
Yeah, I'm much in playing Dark Souls right now. Thank you.
Yeah. So I looked at it and was like, yeah, I'm just going to turn it down one. That way I can have a little fun and still, do it. Because the God of Wars, the last few ones have been really good story-wise, really cool, interesting, fun things going on. So I've been playing that. There's very little that's been wrong. Just a couple of things that kind of bug me. That, I'm going to have to come back to this zone because I don't have this ability or this item to open up this section, to get this thing, which is okay. It's just, I'm like, man, when am I going to get that so I can come back and do this stuff type thing. So, don't know how far I'm in, but it's fine. Nothing wrong. I'm enjoying it. Liking it a lot.
Good. Awesome. Another one I've been liking, especially recently, a YouTube channel. It's called The Operations Room, where they go over actual historical battles.
Interesting.
More World War II than anything, but I think that's just because that's the most information they have. But he's done some stuff on more modern fights, the various, ones in the Middle East in the 80s and stuff. And he does a great job. A lot of them are single episodes, but the recent ones have been like the previous one was Iwo Jima, which is interesting to watch because let's be honest, we know Iwo Jima was tough. We know about the flag raising. Do we know anything else? Generally, not so much. Even in my moderate interest in World War II, I didn't know a ton about the battle. I just knew it was tougher than they thought, and it was rough. And it was good to see a whole series on that. And then now he's doing the Battle of the Bulge. So we mostly know from Easy Company's perspective from Band of Brothers.
Great,
But there was
amazing series.
Yes, but there's a lot more to that. Like he goes over the whole front, not just Easy. In fact, Easy Company, as far as it goes, is a small drop in the bucket of the Battle of the Bulge.
They almost
And-
reached an ammo dump, and the guy literally saw the German vehicles coming down the road, and he just set fire to it, and it blew up minutes before the Germans got that fuel. If they got that fuel, Bulge turns out very differently.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot. He shows a lot of that. He has maps on it. Very good perspective on it. And he's actually started a second one. I forget what the name of the channel is. The Intel Report is the second channel he started, where he goes over background. Like for Iwo Jima, he's like, why was the naval bombardment of Iwo Jima so ineffective? What is the perspective of Iwo Jima from the Japanese soldier? What happened to the soldiers who didn't surrender until years later? As crazy as that sounds. So a lot of good stuff there. If you're looking for some good, solid 15-minute-ish content, the operations room and then the Intel Report, he has a lot of good content, and I feel like he's very respectful of it and very much gives a not necessarily colored by any one side's view of the battles. I mean, obviously, there's so much you can do because, history is written by the victor, so everything's written from, the Allies' perspective for World War II and all. But it is good to see that. It doesn't necessarily feel, let's say, jingoistic in any ways or anything like that. He's British, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't feel like it's, good guys good, bad guys bad. It's more like this is the facts of what happened. And I like that. It fills my World War II knowledge desire on a weekly basis. And he puts out one in each channel every week at the same time, so you can get like, okay, here was the Battle of the Bulge, and then here's why the German supply lines didn't work for the Battle of the Bulge on the other channel. So it's cool to have that combination too.
It's always fun to see tank chats. That's done by the folks at the Bovington Tank Museum, and it's as much for the personalities. And they'll have guests on that'll do top 5 tanks, bottom 5, and sometimes the reason is just because they did a 1/72nd scale of it as when they were a kid, and it was the lousiest tank ever. And they said, "But here's why I love this thing, because when I was a kid, I loved this tank." And then you have the other ones that have the more standard perspective and such. So that's always the fun. And then, of course, when you ever have Fletcher on with his big giant mustache.
I think
he's like
even the history guy did one from there with about tanks. It's a lot of his normal oeuvre, but I love the history guy too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that want to spend Tank Day at Bovington Tank Museum.
Love to. Just interested in the history of that. I'm a big believer in those who do not understand history are doomed to repeat it.
I think that's why I also like the Arms Tier historian, because he will do the political conditions behind it. Like his most recent one was what happened with Italy right before it was invaded. The machinations there were people just like, look, we're going to just join the Allies here. And there was other folks that say, no, you're not. And then the Germans came and said, well, we're just going to do this. We don't care what you guys are doing. And it was all about the political stuff that was going on there. And I think War Factories is another fun one because it covers Fiat, Mitsubishi, Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, and Peugeot, what they did during the war.
And good to remember, those are just companies. They're going to do whatever it takes to fucking survive.
And especially depending on, I think it was one of the aircraft manufacturers. He just said, well, I'm not going to let you have my company. And they said, well, then you're just not going to be alive anymore. And he had a mysterious accident suddenly.
Yeah.
So then the other guy says, oh, we'll be glad to make any plane designs you want.
Yep. It's important to see. People joke about World War II, but it is still the most major event of still the last century. We're still in that point. And there's a lot that's not understood about it, you know? We're so fixated on calling it World War II, and technically we should just call it the World War, because World War One, the ending of that, directly calls World War II pretty much. So less so much two wars as one war split with a little bit of peace in between.
There
But
should
that-
be
Yeah,
should be lots of classes taught on the consequences of Versailles.
indeed. Bouncy, you want to finish this up?
Yeah, I can finish it off. So quick one. Ending of the Great British Baking Challenge happened. Love it. Can't talk about enough. I love watching baking shows like that because it's really wholesome. They don't go there to bash on people or anything. They're all like really. They all want to win, and there's no this big cash prize or anything. So it's not like this big thing. It's just really nice to see people baking and doing some really cool shit. And the person that won was I hardly believe that person deserved it. And it was just really good. But, so I watched, there is a show on Netflix called Inside Job. And Inside Job is a show about shadow societies controlling the world. And that's the best way to put it. It's a cartoon. So, like, there's an Illuminati and, lizard people and all this other stuff. And it's a tongue-in-cheek show type thing. That the reason why Keanu Reeves doesn't look like he ever aged today is because he's technically a vampire and, type thing. And it's all tongue-in-cheek stupidity. And it's an okay show just to have in the background. It's got a few funny parts. Is it great? Not really. Is it funny? Sometimes. But it's like, okay, I'm eating breakfast. I can watch an episode of this, and I'll be done, and I don't have to worry about anything.
We all need shows like that.
Yeah.
Bane and I tend to watch YouTube for that. But, if you have a show that's that short, too, it's great for meal fare.
Correct.
We can't all watch a full episode of something that's an hour long necessarily for a meal. We may not have that kind of time. We have other
Correct.
plans.
And, I watched it, eating breakfast, getting ready for work, or, when I'm working at home.
You get ready for work? I take a shower, I grab my stuff, and I go out the door. That's me getting ready for work.
Well, I eat breakfast. I have to eat breakfast.
Hey,
But-
breakfast at work.
Oh, no. No, couldn't do that. Drink my coffee.
I've got oatmeal. Apparently, Gonzo's not a fan of oatmeal.
No, it's a texture thing. But like I said, it's an okay show. It's not bad, and it's quick and easy. Animation is, not the greatest. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be we're just crank out as many episodes as possible. But it was fun. I give it, like a 1.5, because there were some pretty funny scenes and pretty funny episodes. But overall, just okay. Nothing huge, nothing great, nothing that I'm gonna,
Nothing to write home about.
pretty much. So,
Perfect.
and that puts us right at our time.
Yep.
Yeah, not bad. Guys, we really appreciate everybody coming out. We really appreciate, especially everybody that's, watch this and listens to us. It comes out and says a lot of cool things. And the chat was very hopping in today. I really appreciate that. That was really cool to see
Absolutely.
it. So please take care of yourself. Please watch after each other. Please watch after yourself. Drink some water. Just try to stay healthy.
Yep.
For More Than Dice, I'm Gonzo.
I'm John.
Still identify as Kathy.
Let's go ahead and send you to the Pyro Club. No, let's go to Rainer. Rainer's raided us before. We're going to raid Rainer.
You got it. What is going on?
He just started.
We still got 3 people. Let's send some
let's
people
give him-
there.
Everybody hit that raid button.